it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using some Lawn Fawn images. I'm using Critters Ever After, Fairy Friends, and the little cake is from Beam Me Up. I'm stamping out my images in Memento Tuxedo black ink on some Copic friendly cardstock. Any Copic friendly cardstock will do, and I will be coloring with my Copic markers. So I'm starting with my fairy, and for her face I'm using E50 and E51. I'm going to add a little shadow under her hairline with that E51, and then also to her arms and legs, and then I'll blend that out with the E50. And I felt like it needed just a little bit more depth under that hairline since it would be casting a shadow, so I added a little more E51. The next combo I'm using is R81, R83, and R85. I used the R81 to give the fairy some rosy cheeks, and then I'm also going to color the roof of my turrets with these three shades. So starting on the far left, I'm using that R85. My light source today is going to be on the right-hand side, so my shadows will all be on the left. So I am going about a third of the way and then pulling in the R83 about another third, and then I'll use that R81 to fill in the remaining area. And just so I'm not taking up too much of your time, I'm going to skip ahead on additional images that are colored with the same combo, like that frosting on the cake, and also the cake bottom was colored with the same as the fairy's skin. So next I'm going to use some warm grays to color in my castle. You'll see that I have out W0, W1, W3, and W5. I'm actually only using the three darkest shades on the castle right now. So I'm starting with that W5 and laying in my shadows. I'm going to be much more heavy-handed on the left with that darker color, making sure to cast some really dark shadows under the roof of the turrets. Then I'm going to bring in that W3 and soften up that darker color. The turret that is in the center is going to be mostly those two shades because being a bit darker than the others is going to push it a little bit into the background, so it looks like it's further back on the castle. Then I'm going to come in with my W1 and I'm going to blend everything out and fill the rest of the image in. Once I have that done and the image has had a few seconds to dry, I'm going to go back in and add a little bit of brick detail. Now this is a step that you could definitely skip, but I just think it adds a fun bit of texture to the castle. So I'm going back in with all three of those darker shades. I'm putting the darkest bricks where the darkest shadows are, and then as I move across into the lighter areas, I'm going to get softer and softer. Once I'm done with my castle, I'll use the W1 and W0 to add a little bit of shading to my unicorn's body. Next I'm going to color in my dragon. I'm using V91, V93, V95, and V99. I'm actually starting with the V95. I found that if you start with the V99, at least when I color, and add the other four shades, that I end up having a lot of bleeding out. So I've found it easier to just start with that V95 and then later I go back and add a little bit of that V99 in for some depth. So once again, I started with my shadowed areas and now I'm blending those out with the V93. I'm going to carry those out quite a bit, knowing that I need some of that V95 area for that darker V99 in the end. So I'm going to blend out until I'm happy with the area that's left over for the V91, making sure to add some shading onto the head as well, and reinforce that little crease right above the nose. That's just something that I like to do on my images sometimes. And then I'll go in with my V91 and fill in the rest of the dragon. Then, like I said, I can go back in with that V99 and just add a little bit of that really dark color into all the little cracks and crevices on her body and really add that depth. And then I'll go back down just as I did before and blend in the reverse order. So I'll use the V95 and then the V93 and finish with the V91. And I'm just working in little sections at a time and blending those out right away so that that ink doesn't have any time to dry before I start to blend it out. And that's also going to help with the bleeding because I don't have to work quite as hard or lay down quite as much ink to get it to soften up. Just like I did on the castle, once the image is finished and has dried for a few seconds, I'm going to go back in with some details. In this case, I'm adding some dots just to give her a little bit more of a scaly appearance. And then once I finish with her, I'm also going to color in my fairy's dress and the flags on the top of the turrets. For the unicorn's tail and mane, I'm using RV21, RV23, and RV25. I'm using the RV25 first, and I'm using a little bit of shadow. This time it's on the right-hand side, but that's because her head is kind of turned away. So the shadow would be coming from the back of her head. So I'm pulling the shadows forward onto her face. So I'm blending out with the RV23, and then I'll fill in what is left with that RV21. And then I'll also color in the candles and the fairy wand and the dragon's flames. I wanted to have some gold on the card, so I'm using Y26 and Y32 for that. I'm going to color in all of the dragon's scales and horns and a couple of stripes on her belly. And then once I finish with that off camera, I will also color in the flames of my candle and the star top of the fairy wand and the fairy's hair and the unicorn's horn and hooves. The last combo that I'm using is BV02 and BV04. The BV04 is a little bit dark, so I'm using it very sparingly. And then I will blend out with that BV02. And remember that Copics do dry back just a little bit too, so this will soften up as it dries into the cardstock. I'll also color in my fairy's wings and the windows, and then I'll trim these out with the matching dies. For my background, I'm using a piece of Bristol smooth surface cardstock, and I'm going to blend on some distress inks. I'm using a very light hand at first just to kind of see how dark I want the color to be and build that up. The shade that I'm using right now is Seedless Preserves, and I just want to sponge that on the middle kind of left of the card. I'm not worrying about the bottom section because that's going to be covered up completely. Next, I'm going to come in with some Wilted Violet, and I'm going to blend that in the middle right of the card, kind of going up towards the right corner. Now this is a very pale color, so once again I'm starting soft and building it up, and you'll see that it gets darker as I go. Then I'll come back in with my Seedless Preserves and blend that transition until I'm happy. And then I will bring in my third shade, which is Worn Lipstick, and I'm going to blend that at the top left corner. Once I've reached the level of intensity that I want, I'm going to add some gold flecks to the background. I'm using the Nuvo Aqua Shimmer in the color Midas Touch and just tapping it against my finger to get some nice gold splatters in all different sizes. And then I'll set this panel aside to dry. In the meantime, I cut out 3 panels of the Lawn Fawn Puffy Cloud borders. I've adhered the 2 with the smaller scallops directly to the card, and then while that glue is still wet, I want to slide in my castle so that I know that I have perfect placement and I can adjust that lower border if I need to, but it was pretty good. So then I'm going to take the larger scalloped and I'm going to add some foam tape to the back of that and adhere that down to the bottom of my card, just making sure to line it up nice and straight. And then I can begin to add the rest of my images. So I'll take the unicorn next and I'm going to adhere her down with some more liquid glue. And she's going to get tucked in on this, right behind that largest scallop cloud. So kind of on the second layer there. And then I'll take my little dragon, because I know that I want her over on the left-hand side. So I can adhere her down as well. But she's going to be raised because the cloud border that she's glued to is raised with that foam tape. So that unicorn, it looks like it's a little bit further in the distance, and the castle looks even further back because it's so high up. I added the flame right below her mouth, and then right under that I'm going to add the little cake so that it looks like she's lighting the candles with her fire. And then I'll take my fairy and add her in the top right corner. And I did add some foam tape to the back of her as well to give her some lift and just make it appear as if she's closer than the castle, even though they're both kind of set back. Being on that foam tape is going to add a little bit of lift to her. And then I'll add the fairy wand into her hand. I was originally going to stamp my sentiment onto a banner, but I decided I didn't want to cover up any more of that background. So I decided to stamp directly onto the card front. I'm using the Make-A-Wish sentiment that came with the Critters Ever After stamp set, and I'm using a nice thick ink. This is the VersaFine Onyx Black, and I stamped it down 3 times so that it would really stand out on top of all of that inking. And then while I have my MISTI out, I'm also going to stamp on the inside of my card. I'm using Lawn Fawn Juice Box ink to stamp May All Your Dreams Come True and a few scatters of stars. Then I can take my focal panel and add some liquid glue to the back of that and adhere that down to my card base. Since it's taking up the entire front of the card, I'm just going to press it together at the corners to make sure that it's nice and lined up. To finish off the card, I'm going to take some tiny iridescent stars from Pretty Pink Posh and adhere those down all over the card. I'm using Ranger Multimedia Matte to glue those down, and the easiest way that I find to do this is to just go ahead and dab the glue where I want the stars to go, and then I can grab them with my pick-me-up tool and set them down into the glue. So I'll do, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 little dots of glue at a time, and then go ahead and pick those up and press them into place. And then I can take a look and see if I want to add any additional stars or if I feel like that's enough. In this case, I started with just the clouds, and then I decided that I wanted some up in the sky as well. And that is going to complete our card for today. I'll lift that up to the camera so you can see all that sparkle and shine, both from the gold flecks and the iridescent stars. And there's another peek at the inside as well. I hope you guys have enjoyed today's video. If you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, and you can interact with me down in the comments below. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, I invite you to go ahead and do that. And if you are, I invite you to hit that notification bell to make sure that my videos always end up in your feed. If you'd like more inspiration, here's 2 extra videos I thought you might also enjoy. Thank you guys again so much for watching. I hope you all have an amazing day. Bye-bye.